The waves rolled endlessly against the shore, yet the silence carried a weight of fear. Shadows moved where light met water, and a shape emerged with eyes like burning stones. Its breath came heavy as the tide drew back, exposing sand still trembling from its steps. This was no ruler of the sea, yet it hunted both land and water with the hunger of a ghost that never slept. Eustreptospondylus walked the shore that night, its teeth glinting like daggers under the moon. In the dark of the Jurassic, the giant hunter began its search, and the world held its breath. 165 million years ago, the world was split into fragments of land scattered like broken stones across a warm, shallow sea. Where Europe would one day rise stood clusters of islands, each ringed by coral reefs and beaches of white sand. The air carried the weight of salt and heat, while storms brewed over the horizon with little warning. Life here was fierce and untamed. Pterosaurs drifted above the waves searching for fish, while marine reptiles slid through the water like shadows of living nightmares. On the ground, forests of ferns and cycads stretched in green waves, alive with insects and small reptiles. It was a world of beauty, yet every step was edged with danger, for survival ruled every heartbeat. From the shadows of the forest, a hunter emerged, lean and powerful, its body shaped for a life between land and sea. This was Eustreptospondylus, a predator that stretched nearly 7 meters from snout to tail. Its narrow skull carried rows of sharp teeth curved to pierce flesh and hold struggling prey. Each step pressed deep into the sand, leaving prints that filled quickly with water as the tide crept closer. Its long tail balanced its stride while its eyes burned with a restless hunger. It was not the largest predator of its age, yet it was relentless, built to chase down fish in the shallows or scavenge the fallen. Solitary and watchful, it ruled no kingdom but carved its place on the edge of every island it touched. Life on the islands was never simple. The land offered little to feed a predator of such size, and every hunt carried the risk of failure. Fish darted in schools through the shallows, yet they scattered like silver lightning at the first ripple of danger. Small dinosaurs crossed the beaches in cautious herds, always ready to bolt at the snap of a twig. Scavenging brought meat, but it also brought rivals for the carcass, and the stench of blood carried far across the wind. Storms struck without mercy, tearing across the islands with rain that blinded and waves that swallowed the shores. When the seas grew wild, even the strongest swimmer faced death in the surf, where pliosaurs prowled like monsters from a darker world. Hunger gnawed at the hunter's belly, while the call of danger whispered from every shadow. To survive here was not to rule but to endure, and every step tested the strength of bone and will alike. The hunter moved beyond its home shore, driven by hunger that burned like fire in its chest. The tide was low and sandbars stretched between islands like bridges of gold beneath the sun. With a steady pace it waded into the shallows, its muscles cutting through the water as easily as through air. The sea was no safe passage. Shadows circled below, where pliosaurs and ichthyosaurs hunted with jaws that could shatter bone. Every stroke of its tail carried the risk of attack, yet still it pressed onward. Reaching new land brought no promise of peace. The ground rose into forests of cycads and ferns, where insects swarmed in choking clouds. The air grew thick with heat, and the cries of pterosaurs echoed overhead as they swooped to steal fish from the waves. Small reptiles scurried beneath roots, and in the distance herds of plant-eaters grazed watchfully, never far from flight. The hunter stalked through these strange places, leaving tracks in the wet soil as it searched for food. At times it found scraps of flesh on the shore left by storms that had dashed sea creatures onto the sand. Other times it gave chase to quick-footed prey through the undergrowth, snapping at shadows that vanished before its teeth could close. Every island offered both hope and peril, and every crossing pulled it deeper into the endless struggle that defined its world. The storm rolled across the sea with a voice of thunder as the hunter stalked the tide line. Hunger had driven it far from its first island, yet the scent of prey now hung thick in the air. The cry of gull-like pterosaurs split the sky as they circled above, waiting for blood. The hunter froze. From the trees came another shape. Long jaws, narrow skull, the same restless fire burning in its eyes. It was another Eustreptospondylus. Two predators of equal strength now faced one another across the wet sand. There could be no sharing of this shore. Both lunged at once. Their claws tore into flesh as their jaws snapped like traps built of bone. Water erupted beneath their thrashing tails as the tide surged around them. They locked together, muscles straining, teeth grinding against bone. The first strike drew blood, but the second drove deeper. One hunter clamped its jaws into the side of the other and ripped free a strip of flesh. The roar that followed shook the air like the breaking of stone. The wounded one struck back with a swing of its tail that slammed into its rival's ribs with crushing force. The storm lashed rain across their bodies, waves hammering against their legs, but neither yielded. They fought as if the sea itself demanded sacrifice. Sand turned red beneath their feet. Finally, with a brutal twist, one predator forced the other into the shallows, pressing its head beneath the surf until the thrashing slowed and silence claimed the shore. The victor staggered back, blood streaming from its own wounds. It had survived the trial, yet the cost was carved deep into its body. The island was its now, but survival in this world was never triumph. Only endurance. The storm was gone, yet its memory clung to the sand in broken driftwood and pools of salt water. The hunter stood scarred and weary, its flanks torn and its steps unsteady. The rival had fallen, the sea had claimed its body, yet triumph brought no peace. Hunger still waited and wounds still burned. It limped toward the trees where the ground was firm and the air heavy with the scent of wet leaves. Each step was an effort, but the fire of life had not left its eyes. It lowered its body onto the damp soil and let the rhythm of the ocean fill the silence. Victory was only survival. No crown, no glory, only another night stolen from death. For now the island was its own, yet tomorrow the struggle would rise again. The night passed and the hunter endured, yet even giants cannot outlast the march of ages. Seasons would turn to centuries and centuries to millions of years until the islands themselves sank beneath new seas. Flesh would fade and bone would fall silent, buried beneath layers of stone. Yet stone remembers. Long after the cries of the Jurassic faded, the earth would guard its story. One day strangers would walk these lands with tools in hand and uncover the bones of the hunter that once ruled the shores. They would name it Streptospondylus and write of its strength and struggle. Time had taken its life, yet time also gave it a voice. In silence it lived and in silence it fell, but in stone its story endures forever.